Hello to all, bonjour, здравствуйте. Hello again for those who were here this morning for this panel about the payment industry. So now we're going to speak a little bit about the e-commerce scene in Central and Eastern Europe, which, as you might know, is a very fast-growing scene, very fast-growing industry. To give you just one example, the Russian e-commerce industry now is about $15 billion per year, which might seem to you, if you come from Germany, France, or the United States, or England, a little bit modest. But in less than 10 years, it's forecast to reach $100 billion. And as you know, these countries are already huge markets in terms of quantity of internet users. They're already huge markets in terms of consumer markets. I know, of course, all Western brands and international brands are there in Poland, in Russia, with these supermarkets and outlets. And all this is coming now online. So it is important not only for local players, but also for the international business community to understand this e-commerce, the traction of these e-commerce markets in Central and Eastern Europe. So very briefly, I'm Adrien Henni, the chief editor of East-West Digital News, which is an English language online publication about the Russian digital industry, including a lot about e-commerce. We have dedicated an entire study, a research study of more than 300 pages about the Russian e-commerce market. It's a kind of very important topics to everyone. I'm very happy to invite to the stage great Western and Russian entrepreneurs who now are active in the West End or in Russia. I would like to suggest, first of all, to come to Maxim Faldin. Maxim Faldin is the co-founder of Wikimart, wikimart.ru, which is a leading marketplace on the Russian online retail business. Yes, he's coming. So we will also see Berger, who represents the MIH Allegro Group, which is the Central and Eastern European branch of the well-known Naspers investment group. And they have payment companies in Central and Eastern Europe like PayU, and also a range of online retail and online classifieds properties in Russia, Romania, etc., etc. One of them being by far the leading Russian online classified sites, avito.ru, which is a property of Naspers, Allegro, among other investors. And we're also happy to welcome Moritz, who represents, sorry for this, Scarosso. So I'm a typical potential buyer of Scarosso because my shoes are a little bit old and need to be changed and upgraded. So I'm certainly going to come to his site. He sells wonderful shoes. This is a brand, a manufacturer that goes online directly without middlemen. So he's not selling a lot for the moment on Central European and Eastern European stage, but this is a part of his vision and strategic thinking, to come or not. So let him explain to us what is behind these considerations. So shall we start perhaps with Maxim? Yes.
All right. So where is I supposed to click? Presentation? Yeah. Good. All right, so a brief introduction to Wikimart. Wikimart is a company that is one of the leaders in Russian e-commerce. We have a hybrid business model, which is 1/3 a little bit more than 1/3 is what we call retail, is actually e-commerce where we do pricing, and 2/3 is marketplace. Right now it's actually the only real marketplace in Russia where independent merchants put up merchandise and sell through Wikimart. And I give you a brief introduction to the company's history and how the model evolved, because I think it's very relevant to what we are going to talk about. So we founded in 2008, and then we raised an angel round, and a few of our angels actually here and right now who participated in this first round. Then we got lucky to get probably the best e-commerce investor in the world, which is Tiger Global, and they're with us still since this time, and they're very supportive. And also we have Russian investors. So that's how, on the parallel, our business model was quite evolving. We have B2C marketplace. It was a pure marketplace at the beginning. Then we add retail on top of that, and then we add what we called VMI, vendor managed inventory. And that's how it was actually evolving. So the idea was eBay in Russia. It was the idea of 2008, and then it became very clear that it actually was a bad idea to try to build classic eBay model in Russia in 2009. We evolved in Russian more like Russian Rakuten model. Then it was SEO-driven marketplace. After that, we got retail, as I mentioned, and we gradually increasing share. We're still increasing. Our targeted business model is that we have half and half retail and half marketplace. Retail in specific categories, which is sports, home improvement, and kids, and the rest is mostly marketplace. That's how it works from the customer perspective. On the left side, you see 23 million people who are actually buying in Russia, because we have almost 70 million internet users, but that's not users, that's buyers. On the right side, you see what we actually offer. Merchants, suppliers, stock, VMI stock, and marketplace merchandise. That's a huge selection that we are offering right now. And I would like to add my introduction with 5 thoughts that I think that actually main e-commerce models or classes of models. You have pure marketplace, which I think is very endangered species. I think eBay is the only marketplace that, at least within 5 years, will be the only marketplace in the world that is left. Vertical e-commerce, they are trying to be a multi-category. We see a lot of people who are trying to evolve into multi-category players, being a vertical player, and that's hard. That's really hard. Offline stores going online. We see a lot of attempts, but there is no model yet that really works from our point of view. Vendor managed inventory, that's something we think we not invent, but we practically probably pioneered that. And we believe that's really the future of most of the e-commerce multi-category plays. And the last is flash sales. It's proved to be more of a feature or an application rather than a business in itself, because the model is very limited. That's why we put some limitation sign here. That's my brief thoughts of the e-commerce models.
Thank you very much, Maxim. So this gives fine thoughts for further discussion. Please present to us your company.
Just do I switch on? Okay, I guess it would have been nice if I would have presented first, because your last bullets were very interesting, actually guiding on our business. So what we are doing is pretty much the opposite of what Maxim is doing. So we started 2010 few words to myself. So I, with my co-founder, I studied in Bocconi, did my MBA, and that was also the birth of our company. And our major goal was to that time to build a company which is doing annually perhaps 60,000 euros, and has one shop. So that was the dream, and that was the goal we had. Currently we're operating 3 stores. They are profitable since day one. This means that we try to bridge, and that was Maxim also pointed out, the bridge between offline and online market. We built the brand early on, and yeah, from that part. So what did we build? What are we doing? We are vertically integrated, and we position ourselves in a new segment. So what we have discovered over the last period is that you have a luxury segment and you have a medium segment, but due to the vertical integration of the companies, we can save a margin which we pass to the consumer, and therefore undercut the pricing of the luxury segment. So pretty much we are the Warby Parker for shoes, with the umbrella positioning of a mass customization aspect. So you can design your own products online, which we then hand manufacture in Italy and ship it to you within 4 weeks. So that's in the end the mission. So we have been a game changer in the current industry of the shoe production, and by cutting out the middleman and full vertical integration. Products all made in Italy. This means that's also an operation side. So what we are doing is pretty much that we copy the Zara model. So we have short lead times. We try to decrease the inventory in regards to that we push certain kinds of flash collections, see what are A, B, C products, and then reorder within 1-2 weeks and replenish only A products. In regards push B products with marketing, and C products we just, due to sales and flash sales, we try to get rid of it. So very lean on the operation side as well. What we have done so far, we tested. Our investors were not very happy in the beginning about it because they wanted to position us as a pure e-commerce player, only online player. We have understood that online brands you have to build also with an offline angle. So we operated our first store in Hamburg from November on, was profitable since day one. So far, totally different unit economics as the online segment. And it's a great contribution in the end to our online channel. So in the end, we don't treat offline pretty much different to the online segment. So we have the same KPIs, how we measure the online store. So we measure the bypassing traffic, footfall, conversion rates. We have kind of a heat map where you can see the dwell times, what kind of people pick, what kind of products we readjusted. Furthermore, what kind of benefits we have seen is that 14% of our current customers, which we acquired offline, which came in on a CPA roughly around €5, are repurchasing also online. So the great benefit, what we are seeing here, is the contribution which offline really pays off for the online segment in the future. Furthermore, it's a great brand visibility effect. 8%, as you see here on the slide, 8% of our offline consumers test the product offline first. So that's pretty much, they go there, they build credibility, it builds credibility with the customer firsthand. So what are the benefits in the end? So we have a further marketing channel for the online channel. So we don't treat offline different to online. We have new customer acquisition on a very, very low CPA. And we have, therefore, a good repurchasing rate as we can steer to CRM marketing efforts, increase our repurchasing behavior in the online segment, which drastically decreases our CPO at the end. We have a premium service level. People trust us as we are offline as well. They know that they can buy a product and bring it to someone physical. It's not only a digital world so far. We get direct product feedback, which is very important for us from our side because we design our products ourselves as well. This means that we have to see what the consumer behavior on this part is. For the offline segment, very much, we have brand awareness. We have a 24/7 purchase ability. So after you once purchased offline, you can leverage on the assets on the online segment. Okay, so far.
Thank you very much. I would like to start the discussion with Adrien. Not only could you, of course, present your business, your investment and also operational business in the field of payments and e-commerce, but also I thought you could explain to us from a global perspective, from a global vision, how does the Central and Eastern European area look like, among others, for international investors?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing that I'd say about Central Eastern Europe is that we still like to look at it quite individually on a country-by-country basis, because I think there are quite a lot of, you know, while it's a region, you know, e-commerce in Russia is very different to e-commerce in Turkey. The challenges there are quite different. So I think that would just be the first caveat when we talk about the general framework. I think, you know, other than that, obviously a lot of what we see today has emerged from the West, from the US, and it's coming across. You know, and I think also very much when you look at the US, for example, you're looking at one market, and that changes the dynamic quite a lot. And again, if you look at Western Europe, for example, even within Western Europe, you've got a lot of differences. Germany has very particular buying patterns, you know, having developed from catalog, for example. So I think, you know, there are a lot of similarities and a lot of crossovers, but a lot of specific within-country differences is the way I'd sort of summarize that picture.
Would you say that these specificities are really country by country? There's nothing such as Central and Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Russia is not Romania and Poland is not Ukraine.
I would say that as foremost, but there definitely are some similarities, right? I think if you're going to generalize, you could say that infrastructurally things are obviously more challenging in Central Eastern Europe, and very much the other big factor that I think most of us are aware of is payments. You know, and again, I would differentiate because Turkey, for example, is very different, but in Central Eastern Europe, I think as most people know, there's a lot of cash on delivery, which obviously affects, you know, how you operate your business, your working capital, etc. So certainly, you know, those would be two areas where I'd say there are some very distinct differences.
Another question about your strategy in this region and perhaps in the biggest market of all, the Russian market. Do you have any intention of keeping your properties and develop them further, or perhaps new acquisitions or launch of new products?
Sure. So, I mean, specifically, my role is to focus on acquisitions, and I spend also quite a lot of time with our different portfolio companies. And I would say broadly, you know, we remain interested. I think our sort of model, we're trying to. In Poland specifically, we develop from a marketplace. That remains very, very strong and a very dominant model. But I think, like Maxim mentioned earlier as well, is that it also has its limitations. And you see, for example, you know, in certain instances, pure play online inventory taking, retail serves the customer far better. So, you know, where we see that happening, we move towards that. Same applies in classifieds. It's serving a need that the customer you know wants, and so we continue you know to focus on those areas, and where we see opportunities, definitely build those out, and the same applies to Russia certainly.
And in a word, would you recommend international retailers and investors to go east or to abstain from now? What would you say to this young man about the Eastern European market?
If you're asking me for in a word, the answer is yes.
so go east.
Yeah. No, I think there's plenty of opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Would you, from your point of view of a mid-sized company, manufacturer and online retailer, online, offline also, how do you see this Eastern Europe market? How do you envision it compared to the markets where you already operate and where you started to operate?
I mean, from that perspective, we see in terms of internationalization, it's more in regards to cities, right? So it's if how we normally internationalize in markets, that's pretty much we start with a pop-up store to see how the reflection is of the consumers, see how certain areas also of the cities, and then we remarket with online behavior. So for our perspective, we would like to go, but at a certain stage you need also the money to internationalize it for that stage. And currently we're in the phase where we focus on our core markets, which are Germany, Austria and Switzerland, and then go further to France, UK. And at a certain stage, for sure, we will try to see also, I think Kiev is a great place to to operate on this part. But as we see, also the style is different, so we have to adapt perhaps also on the local taste behavior on this part.
So you are saying that the first, I would say, natural expansion would be to Western countries.
Yeah.
And then perhaps afterwards to Central European countries. And can you tell us a couple of reasons why this range of priority? Is it a kind of question of market size or a question of difficulties and complexities of these countries?
I mean, what we have seen so far is that we have done some deals with La Moda in Russia. So we had several, the lead times are increasing due to the customs. So it's not as easy operatable as in the Western European part. So from that perspective, for sure, we are going to grasp the market where we operational-wise can leverage on our current network, rather than add further complexity to our business, which we currently couldn't operate with. So we have to be ready to also internationalize to countries in the East.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for Maxim. Let's take the Russian market as an example of rather large market already, but with some specificities. Many think that when you launch a startup in Russia, it's usually a copycat, a clone of an existing Western concept. To which extent do you think this is true? And I'm asking you this question because I think you designed your startup while studying in an American university. So perhaps you switch from a more or less American-inspired concept to the reality that perhaps have...
Yeah, and it took us 3 years to make it from this design, pure academic MBA type design of the company, of the business model, to what really works in Russia. You saw the slide. We did start with the eBay model in mind. We very quickly, like first 2 or 3 months, changed it to more Rakuten model, and then it evolved a great deal after that. So, and I believe that that's sort of evolution to some extent, and to a large extent, I think, actually, going on in any so-called copycat. The copycat is idea that you copy, actually, or approaches, or vision. But after that, and that's the entrepreneurial's job, to evolve and to make it real, to localize, basically, the business model. And that's why investors put their money in us. Because it's no way that just copycat as it is will work in Russia or will last long. I wouldn't say that.
Okay. And do you think that there might be innovation in the field of e-commerce from Russia that could inspire?
Absolutely.
From Russia, other countries that, for instance, I was told that Enter.ru is a rather original way of combining offline and online.
I tell you more. We do a lot of innovations in Wikimart, and we are a happy part of Tiger portfolio family. And we talk to each and every significant player in this family, which is over 100 portfolio companies around the globe. I constantly travel to Middle East, to India, to Singapore, to many other places, and meet entrepreneurs. Also, we have them visiting our Moscow office. Like last week, we had a huge delegation from Middle East, the company called Suk, which are looking into what we are doing in SEO, because we are the best in SEO probably in the world in e-commerce, not only in Russia. And there are a lot of innovation that we export, not only import in our company.
What would be, according to you, and I'm asking this question to Adrien and Maxim, what would be the last frontier in this region? For instance, can Kazakhstan and Central Asian market be defined as a market that is, well, already or bound to become important, but
this is
still
just the evolution of the
untapped?
customer. This is just the evolution of the customer that what we're seeing. We have, as I mentioned, 70 million internet users, but we only have only third of them who are actually internet buyers. For instance, in China, the ratio is 50%. It's 50% of the internet customers, internet users who actually become e-commerce customers. And in Kazakhstan, I believe the ratio is like 5% or even less than that. It's just the evolution. This market is not there yet. But once it is, it will be interesting market for us. Absolutely.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think a lot of these things, e-commerce is also, I don't think it's something that you can really rush. It takes time. Also talking to your earlier point on copycats, you can't just copy something and then, it lands and it works. There's a lot of, the better companies that we've seen have actually been doing what they're doing for a number of years before they're actually getting to, let's say, profitability, etc. And I think the same applies when you're talking about, in Kazakhstan, for example, it's just an earlier stage, and the businesses are in the process of iterating that, their offering.
Yeah, just said to that, you copy inspiration. That's most what you copy, and then you iterate from that. And you need investor money to iterate. That's basically what's going on in e-commerce right now.
Andre, you mentioned earlier in this discussion, although each country has its own specificities, you mentioned the fact that there are things that are common. For instance, logistics and fulfillment that are in sort of more problematic than in certain other advanced countries. Another specificity in certain countries is the payment methods, with cash remaining the most, by far, the most used way of payment. Do you think, this is a question to you and to Maxim, do you think that there is going to be in the long term a convergence? I mean, these specificities being more or less smoothened and disappear with time? As we can see, for instance, in the huge progress of the fulfillment providers in Russia for the last 2 years. So is it going to converge, and will the conditions be even in 5 or 10 years?
Eventually it will, but it will take a long time. Because e-commerce is the most offline play in all online world. Yeah, so we are not like online gaming or social networks. Even in online gaming and social networks, Russia has a lot of specificity. So you know that Facebook is actually number 3, and it's not growing in Russia, or growing very slowly. We have Odnoklassniki and Kontakty, which is very different from what Facebook is, and you have Yandex. We have a lot of other examples in pure internet play when actually local players that takes advantage of these special peculiarities, I would say, of Russian landscape, and it's even more so in e-commerce. It will take a lot of time to it's become more like universal. Of e-commerce play like it is in the Western world to some extent. Even there, I don't think if you go deeper, you see that the US is one thing, Japan is totally different, and Korea is the third.
Yeah, my answer is really ditto to that. I agree that I think ultimately you will get convergence, and that it's a question of time, really. I think what's interesting is, what happens in the interim, and those things that happen in the interim, do those change slightly what the landscape ends up looking like, a few years down the line, based on who's doing that. For example, if it's not a DHL, it's a local player that arrives to meet that need and then continues to meet that need. So I think there's almost opportunity to service that, and you'll see the pattern ultimately will look the same, but you might not see the same people serving that need that you see in the West, for example.
And one last question, since we're, after all, in a conference, in an event that was initially and still devoted to investment issues. Do you think, Maxim and Andre, Russia and perhaps other countries of the former Soviet Union in particular, were a sort of non-existing territory, or if it existed, with a sickle and hammer standing above, a sort of country with where Western investors were not ready to invest a few years ago. This is changing slowly, but do you think it still is a very big issue now, or is it the market has been opened?
I mean, my view is that it's fairly open. I mean, from the investor side, you see a lot of people there. A lot of. It's pretty easy to pick out who the bigger players are, and I think there's been a lot of interest, and you've seen a lot of investment. So, I don't know when it really comes to flow, whether the West may well still attract a bit more, but I do think there's a lot of interest, and I think the interest comes from, and it's not even real frontier investors anymore, it's pretty established mainstay investors that are interested in the kind of growth that the region promises. I mean, delivering is a separate topic, but you know.
So you no more notice a strong fear among your peers about when it comes to Russia or Ukraine or something like that, that is going to lose all their money or it's too complicated or...
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's still concerns, right? I mean, there's no debate about that, and there's still real challenges, right? It's not that all those fears are unfounded. You know, I don't think it's a question of, oh, I'm going to lose all my money or my entire investment because of the region per se. I mean, it may have to do with the company, but I think people are becoming more comfortable.
Okay. To conclude, Maxim, your own personal observations, as you have been discussing with Western investors about the Russian e-commerce market for years, how this perception have evolved?
You know, I think that in a large scale, Russia is practically cut off from their capital markets. They're very hard to raise debt in Russia, for instance. They're even harder to raise equity. But the exception is the internet investment. We still have small but stable flow of investment coming into the country. And I think that all this political risk or landscape risk or whatever risk you would think of, it's still very small in comparison to the risk of business model. And that's why investors are so comfortable just writing off checks, because they don't see that this additional Russia-specific risk add much in terms of how they see risk profile of the investment. That's my observation. That's first thing. And second thing, there are a lot of Western investors that would tell you that we don't work with Russia, we don't invest in Russia. But I agree. It's mostly because they haven't seen a good enough company. Because my experience was that that's changed with the company. That doesn't change with us conceptual. Putin wrote this article in Wall Street Journal, now we start investing in Russia. It's not working like that. It works with the right entrepreneurs, the right time, the right business model, appearing in front of investor, and they seize the opportunity.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to all. Of course, half an hour or 40 minutes is far from being enough to discuss this very rich and extensive topics. So you have the opportunity to speak, to continue the discussion as in a form of a private chat with Maxim, Adrien, and Moritz in the TA Venture Lounge in a few minutes. They will be very happy to continue the discussion, as well as myself. And if you are interested in the Russian e-commerce markets, you can see our website with free information about these topics, as well as our research studies on this topic. Thank you.